Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Matthew Boyle, the project manager and senior landscape architect with the City of Arvada. And we will go ahead and turn it over to Wank and Associates to do this presentation.
Great, thank you, Maki. We started this project in the fall of 2022 and really started talking about wanting to create a destination that celebrates the creek, the history of the park, and a gateway into the city. And through the last year and a half, we've put together a plan that we feel accomplishes that. So our project schedule, we really started reaching out to the public. Next slide. In spring of 2023, so we had worked with the city and stakeholders prior to that to kind of come up with some of the goals, and then did outreach through our visioning, through 2 alternatives that we developed, and then the final plan that we're sharing today, and got a lot of outreach from the public. We went to Foster Elementary School to really try to dive in deeper to the Hispanic and Latino communities that are nearby, and then went to the Kite Festival and Arvada Days. So we're out there as well as online through a survey. What we heard from the public was really centered around 5 major themes: play, gather, grow, connect, and learn. And you'll hear these again as we go through presenting the plan. Play was really focused a lot around nature play and being family friendly for all ages. Gather, thinking about spaces that are flexible and providing restrooms and visibility into the park, really creating a place that feels safe. Grow, focused around the ecology, this site being at the confluence of Ralston and Clear Creek has a lot of birds and bees and bat boxes and stream habitat. So really wanting to think about that and how we could interpret it. Connections were along the regional bike path. There was also a lot of interest in walking loops, so how you could explore through the park. And then also thinking not just arriving by bike, but also arriving by car, school buses coming here, and how we could provide enough to really activate it as a new type of park. And then learn, this being where GoldStrikePark, where Gold was founded in Arvada. It has a long history with that, but there's a lot of stories to tell, and we heard that through the process, and different voices and lenses that we can share those through. And when Jen presents the plan, we'll talk about how we're going to accomplish that. The site context. So here we are. GoldStrikePark is at the southeastern border of Denver and Arvada. So why we kind of think of it as a gateway. We looked at the parks that are surrounding it. Within that mile radius, GoldStrike is the only one that has access to water. So really wanting to celebrate that. It is also, let's see, there's the alternatives that we kind of explored. There was a lot of public feedback and interest in dog parks. Arvada only has 2 of those. There was also a lot of interest in the bike, a bike playground and that type of thing, which you'll see in the plan. And Arvada doesn't have an official one currently for that. So GoldStrike makes it a great opportunity for that. The site history, I think this is, the discovery of gold. There's also the First Peoples and the voices of that, not just thinking it through the lens of the pioneers, but the Native Americans that lived here, the Cheyenne, Ute, Arapaho, and Lakota tribes, and how that story can also be told. There are 2 sculptures out there that were inspired by the Western landscape. So you see those on the bottom right. The structural underbelly is what those were called, and they were put on the site in 2012. Thinking through the site plan of really creating a space for these sculptures, where right now they kind of float out there. How can we really ground them into a sense of place? A lot of planning efforts have gone underway for Gold Strike Park. In 2000, a master plan was created that had 8 goals to it. And I won't read through these, but a lot of the themes that we've been talking about, and creating a fun place to visit. And I think that's something that has a lot of opportunity as we look at this master plan and new things that could be added to it. What can make this place fun? The 2016 Parks, Trails and Open Space Plan designated it as a historic site for the finding of gold. So really that idea of telling these stories, we want that to come through the plan. And then the 2018 Clear Creek Corridor Master Plan identified this as an opportunity site and kind of brought the idea of providing a place for nature play and the access to the creek and providing outdoor recreation and a trail hierarchy. So all of those plans always talked about ecological restoration. We're continuing to do that, but bringing these themes forward as we look at the master plan. The opportunities and constraints of the site. You can see here on the graphic, it is surrounded by a lot of industrial car parking lots. You can kind of see that. So really thinking about how we can view, create buffers along the edges and really focus the views towards the creek and using that a restored landscape to create a sense of place that really focuses into the site itself. There are some steep banks along the creek edge that have some concerns with erosion over time. So as the master plan goes into place, really thinking about those. There's some great riparian edges along the creek edge itself, but the vegetation in the park has a lot of weeds. And so really the plan talks about removal of those non-native trees and weed management to really keep that from continuing on and restoring the site with native habitats and pollinators, birds and bees and bats, and thinking of those things as we look at the landscape plan. And then the site is in a backwater condition caused by the Sheridan Bridge. It is in the 100-year floodplain, not all of the site, but a significant amount of it. So when we're thinking about putting in new features in the park, really wanting to create those in areas where it's outside of that floodplain and allowing the floodplain itself to have more natural vegetation that can help connect to the creek. So project goals and visions, these were really built from those 5 themes. I don't probably need to read them again, but play, gather, grow, connect, learn, and we kind of talked about some of those, really bringing that into the site.
Yeah. So looking at the final plan, we're wondering how to bring these past iterations and work with the public in the city and manifesting those project goals and visions into space and amenities. So interactive play, we're looking at things like using soft and organic sort of wood features for nature play, water, looking into interacting with Ralston Creek in times of low flow where it's safer, and having an interactive water pump with potable water, and gathering, definitely looking into a flexible event lawn, and that can hold things such as flying kites or movie nights or impromptu games, throw up a volleyball net, looking at picnic pavilions, restrooms, some seating along trails and throughout the park, but keeping the habitat very like improving the habitat that exists, and looking at integrating pollinator meadows and maintaining those existing healthy trees, integrating bird and bat boxes, connecting to the existing regional trail, and within the park using soft and paved trails to be able to explore everything, including a few low creek crossings and a pedestrian bridge in the center. And we do want this to be a space that can facilitate learning. So there's spaces for overlooks that can include interpretive elements and signage. And those can also be used at the educational picnic pavilion. So. So Ralston Creek is really the center point of the plan. Everything sort of bleeds off of it. It's right in the middle of the site. So looking at being able to interact with that as much as possible, can start with circulation, where on the north and south sides, there are low flow crossings and a pedestrian bridge that traverses right in the middle of the site. The low flow crossings are connected to two play areas, and these are that destination area, the regional nature play is what that's sized for. And the northern side is more catered to all age groups, as the southern side is more for big kid play. And the pedestrian bridge connects both sides in a more accessible fashion and forms a central axis across the park, where on the west side, there's a shaded picnic area and opportunities to view the two existing sculptures. And on the west side of the park goes to that flexible event lawn and educational pavilion. All these are very accessible by two parking lots on both sides of the park. The northern one being accessed by Ralston Frontage Road that has a bus drop off, and the western one being accessible by 56th Avenue, also with the bus drop off. And both of those are outside of the floodplain and have adjacent water quality areas. And the overall idea of the plan is definitely to keep it natural and try to have low impact interaction with the site. So a lot of the existing topography is being maintained and trying to respect the site that way. Other things that we're looking at is to the southwest. There's potential land acquisition, and so we've sort of just dashed in a potential overlook that can look over the confluence of Ralston and Clear Creeks. And to the southwest, we're proposing a bicycle playground. This has been responding to a lot of feedback that we heard from the community. It's adjacent to the regional bike trail, and this playground would be definitely family focused, looking at Strider bikes, progressive features, and can include something like compacted dirt paths, maybe an asphalt pump track, and can include features that nod to the history of the site and have sort of fun integrated in that way. And as well, it buffers the industrial site that's just adjacent to it. So the next slide. And a slight alternative to that final plan, where the bike park is, we're looking at a dog park or community garden, and that's just dependent on what the city may need or desire when this goes in. And as Nicole mentioned, we're looking at how to be able to tell different stories within the park. So we're looking at telling the story of finding gold in Ralston Creek, but also the history of Indigenous voices that existed long before, and telling a story of the existing ecology and how that's being improved. And this is being accomplished with 3 different walking loops that converge on either side of the pedestrian bridge on both sides of the park. So we're calling this an opportunity for shared stories. And these loops, we're envisioning them having distinct paving treatment, so between soft surfaces, hard surfaces, and allow one to explore the entire site. And each path goes past points of significance for each topic. So the Gold History Loop starts at the Educational Pavilion, goes around the flexible event lawn, allows an opportunity to cross the creek and interact with the creek itself up north at the low flow crossing before returning. The Indigenous History Loop also starts at the Educational Pavilion, traverses through a lot of enhanced natural areas, also gets an opportunity to interact with Ralston Creek, and has a more secluded area where there's opportunities for interpretive areas, and to the west side that is able to go through an interpretive garden where we can work with some of the local tribes to see what elements they'd like to see included. And finally, the ecological route centers around Ralston Creek. So to begin at the bridge and traverse through both low flow crossings, goes through a boardwalk on the south side before going and finishing up the loop. We're looking at also keeping the structures to a minimum in line with keeping the park very naturalistic. So regional nature play features are primarily wooden, looking at integrating just a lot of soft surfaces with a lot of tactile features. And looking at a water feature, if anyone's familiar with Chicken Park, this is a precedent where we're looking at having a pump that folks can interact with. So this is potable water, so it's safe and serves as an alternative to playing directly in Ralston Creek in those safer low flow times. And this can just sort of nod to gold panning history or just being able to create your own creek, sort of thing. And the other structures we're looking at, again, keeping it to a minimum, but public restrooms on the east side of the park adjacent to the parking lot, an educational pavilion also on the east side that could be rentable, particularly we've heard interest by Majestic View Nature Center. And just across the creek is a picnic shelter, and we've been looking at this holding approximately 40 folks. And here's a couple images depicting the park. So this is nature play along Ralston Creek, and looking right at that pedestrian bridge in the middle. Just past is that flexible event lawn and the educational pavilion. Just to the right, parking lot by the frontage road. A little more left is the restroom, and just south is that nature play area that allows interaction with Ralston Creek, and definitely looking into a lot of native planting being integrated within that play area to keep it softer and more naturalistic. And then finally, we have a little more south in the plan, the southern low flow crossing. So this depicts the boardwalk running through wetlands, meeting an overlook. The regional trail is just up to the left side. And hardly in the background, you can see the pedestrian bridge. And to the right is that bouldering feature. So that's part of that regional nature play that's catered to bigger kids.
Great, thank you so much.